If your fantasy drafts are anything like mine, there's always a very colorful debate at the end of the draft where everybody talks about the guys that were either drafted too high or drafted too low. And everybody has their own opinion on where somebody should have been drafted. But in reality, it doesn't matter where you take a player, as long as you believe in them and you feel you've evaluated them correctly. So what players in 2024 drafts am I willing to overdraft? I've got my top 20 players right now, ranging from early round to mid round to late round picks that I'm willing to overdraft just to make sure I get them on my team. I'm a headliner. Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Today's video is going to be all about what players I am willing to overdraft at whatever their current ADP states. And we've always said this time and time again. ADP is a tool that you use to try and gauge player value, but it's not something that you live and die by within your drafts. If a guy's being drafted in the 5th round overall and you feel like you have to have them, then who cares if you use a 4th round pick on them? And for my top 20 players that I'm willing to overdraft, I'm going to include their current ADP and expert consensus rankings just so you can see where other people are currently valuing them. But I want to try something a little bit different with today's video. I want to pin one of the top comments that I see in the video down below. So your profile will be featured at the top of the comment section for our video today. In the comment section, type in hashtag overdraft and then give me one player that you're willing to overdraft to ensure they are on your team this fantasy season. And I want to hear your best explanation why. The top comments that I find will be pinned at the top of the comment section, and whichever one finishes there within 48 hours of this video ending will end up getting a free draft guide from me. So make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe, and when you're done watching the video, leave your comment with hashtag overdraft and whatever player you're overdrafting this season and why. The first player that I'm willing to overdraft would be difficult to overdraft given where his current ADP is, but man, I can't get enough Amon-Ra St. Brown this draft season. And you might think it's a homer pick because of the apparel, but I can promise you it's not. Amon-Ra St. Brown is an absolute beast, and I want him on all my fantasy teams this year if the top running backs are off the board. Right now, his ADP puts him at 7.3 as the wide receiver 5. The expert consensus ranking has him at 6 overall. By the way, that's what ECR stands for, as the wide receiver 4. Quite honestly, Christian McCaffrey and Breece Hall are my two main targets at the top of the first round right now. Tyreek Hill would be number 3. I'll keep him at wide receiver 1. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm willing to draft over CeeDee Lamb, even though I do have CeeDee Lamb a little higher in my rankings. I understand CeeDee Lamb will have a higher ceiling each and every week, but I do believe Amon-Ra St. Brown may be the safest wide receiver in all of football. For the love of all things holy, give me as much Derrick Henry as I possibly can get this season. Did you see Gus Edwards' numbers last year? The dude ran for double-digit touchdowns and had a bulk of the carries last season. As a team, they ran for over 1,000 yards with just their running backs and more than 15 touchdowns. Derrick Henry is going to get a bulk of the workload. Justice Hill's going to get a few carries here and there. But do we not think that Derrick Henry cannot be a solid RB1 this season? Right now, his ADP has him at 20th overall as the RB9. The ECR, very close. They have him as 19 overall, also as the RB9. But I'm willing to draft this guy as a mid RB1. I want him at the end of the first round or beginning of the second round every single time. At the end of the first round, if you want to go with a Garrett Wilson, a Jonathan Taylor, guys like that, Saquon Barkley, that's fine. But if you pick in the early second round, you better be drafting Derrick Henry. Listen, if I'm going running back heavy to start my drafting, give me as much Mike Evans as I possibly can. Currently with an ADP of 31.3, I am absolutely taking him at the beginning of the third round if I can possibly do it. And his ADP has him ranked as the wide receiver 16. This is a guy with top 12 potential this season, and one of the most steady contributors at the wide receiver position for the last several years. Touchdowns can go up and down a little bit, but the receiving yards, the targets, the receptions, all of those continue to be consistent on a yearly basis. Give me some Mike Evans as my wide receiver 1 this season. Michael Pittman is my wide receiver 1, not super excited about. But locking him in as my wide receiver 2 every single week is going to mean I'm not going to have to worry about that position. Michael Pittman does not bring a ton of upside. Maybe his touchdowns will come this year, and maybe those tick up enough to get him more towards wide receiver 1 status. But as my wide receiver 2, I'm fine with solid weekly wide receiver 2 numbers. Anthony Richardson at the beginning of last year was consistently looking his way. Anthony Richardson got hurt, then Gardner Minshew is consistently looking his way. Even though they've added Adonai Mitchell, Michael Pittman Jr. will still lead this team in targets. Now, even though Joe Mixon is being viewed as the RB15 by ADP standards, people don't want to draft him until the 4th round. Now, at the end of the 3rd round, I'm willing to pick Joe Mixon. If you have an early 4th round pick, I'm willing to pick Joe Mixon. Him as my RB1 right now, I am absolutely okay with. Him as my RB2 right now, I am absolutely ecstatic about. And I'll tell you what right now, Joe Mixon at his current ADP fit perfectly in to the perfect draft section of our 2024 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. And if you're interested in getting your draft guide right now, don't even wait for the giveaway, because if you win any of our giveaways this offseason, we're going to refund you the price of our draft guide. And you're not going to want to miss out on all of the content, which includes our perfect draft section, where I go through 10 rounds worth of ADP from every single draft spot and try to lay out how my perfect draft would look for you. And if you're picking at the end of the 1st round, you can absolutely hammer Joe Mixon in the 4th round is either your RB2 in a balanced approach or your RB3 if you go running back heavy, and then your running backs are absolutely solid. And the analysis that I give you in the perfect draft is something that you don't want to miss. But we also have other exclusive content like the deep diving analytics of my dynamic running back rating, a tool that you can use to find the next breakout running backs that no other fantasy website offers. But don't forget, hundreds of player profiles, breakouts, busts, sleepers, cheat sheets, tier rankings. Everything you need to be successful this year is only $21.99, and you can get yours right now in the description down below by heading on over to our website, tfhdraftguide.com, and ordering yours right now. And if you win one of our giveaways, we'll just refund you the price of the draft guide, and then you'll get it for free. I'm sorry, but I can't quit Kenneth Walker. No matter what you tell me about the guy, there's just too much in the analytics that show us that Kenneth Walker has some huge upside every single week. For him, right now, the ADP, 46.3 overall, the RB16 off the board. This is a guy that I really feel like can finish in that RB11 to RB14 area. There's going to be some weeks that are huge, that he finishes as an RB1. There's going to be some other weeks where maybe he does finish as a little bit lower of an RB2. But this is a guy that even if you give him 15 touches a week, he can give you enough of a performance to give you high upside RB2 numbers consistently. George Pickens has some absolutely crazy potential this season. He was a breakout candidate in our draft guide for me last year. Breakout, yes. Consistently, not what we would like. That could happen right now, though. And it's crazy to see that the ADP is only considering him as the wide receiver 27, while the ECR has him at wide receiver 26. With his big play potential and potential for uptick in volume, George Pickens has wide receiver 2 written all over him this year. Can Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery play together on the same fantasy team? Absolutely. Is David Montgomery a good RB1 for your fantasy team? I wouldn't wait that long to draft my RB1. But is your RB2? I don't hate it. Is my RB3? I absolutely love it. David Montgomery has tons of potential this season. And even though people are going to talk about his regression in touchdowns, why would he regress? Yeah, he did play well at the beginning of last season when Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't really being utilized. But down the stretch, while Jahmyr Gibbs was putting together a top 5 RB performance, David Montgomery was still finishing consistently with inside the top 16 running backs. This is the same offense with a better offensive line, believe it or not. The same weapons, same structure, same quarterback, same everything in Detroit. Invest in the Detroit Lions. I know I sound biased, but for the first time in my lifetime, I'm allowed to be biased about the Lions because they're one of the best teams and absolutely one of the best offenses in all of football. If you're waiting on tight ends, George Kittle is the tight end 7 right now is absolutely a fantastic value. This is a guy that consistently finishes as a top 3 tight end. And yeah, he does unfortunately miss some games from time to time, but last year he was fully healthy. Fingers crossed it keeps up into 2024. But if it does, George Kittle is going to end up being one of the best bargains at the tight end position. Now, is the tight end 7, George Kittle offers you top 3 tight end upside. Is the tight end 8, Evan Ingram, doesn't offer you a whole lot of upside. But if you're looking for a consistent fantasy contributor, a guy that you can stick in your lineup that you know is going to give you 8 to 12 fantasy points per week at the tight end position, Evan Ingram is your guy. He might not score a lot of touchdowns, and he may not end up putting the big play yards together that gives you a little bit more upside, but the targets will be there, the receptions will be there, the receiving yards will be there, all in an effort to make him one of the safest tight ends in all of fantasy football. Jake Ferguson is the tight end 9, was a guy that I mentioned way back this offseason. I think in a video basically right after the season ended, where he had an opportunity to become one of the biggest breakout candidates this season, not just at tight end, but anywhere. And that is held true because the Dallas Cowboys didn't really do a whole lot with their team. They still have Brandon Cooks as the wide receiver too, to pair with CeeDee Lamb. But Jake Ferguson, if the Cowboys know what's good for them, should be the second target on this team this season. And if he is, and if he takes that big step forward this year, Jake Ferguson could end up being a top 5 tight end. Now, if you've listened closely to me over the last couple of seasons, last 3 seasons even, you know that I love diving into analytics and that I use analytics to try and predict some of the biggest breakout candidates at the running back position. And so far, my dynamic running back rating has done just that. Jaylen Warren is a DRBR darling, and when I say that he has big breakout potential, he did last season, and he still has even more this year. If you're looking for upside for a guy that you're drafting as like an RB4, RB3, depending on how your draft has gone, Jaylen Warren is absolutely that guy. Najee Harris will have a safe floor this season. Jaylen Warren is going to have a huge ceiling every single week. In my must-have wide receiver video that I put out last week, Rashee Rice was one of the guys that I mentioned in that video. If you missed it, go check it out when this one is done. Rashee Rice was an absolute animal out of the slot last season towards the end of the year. First half of the season, saw some up and down performances. Later in the year, though, he was consistently being looked at and was a top 12 wide receiver. Now, is he going to be top 12 this year? With the addition of Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown, no, he will not be. but he's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 37. We're not drafting him to be a top 12 wide receiver. We're drafting him to be a flex position player, maybe a wide receiver 3, a guy that can be on our bench. And by everything that we're seeing on the legal side of stuff, Rashee Rice may not face a suspension until either very late in the season or in 2025. Chase Brown is the RB40, feels like an absolute steal. And it's crazy that Zach Moss is still being drafted over 10 spots higher than him right now. Now, Zach Moss on the initial depth charts is listed as the RB1, but by all indications and all reports out of training camp, Chase Brown has looked way better. And even if Zach Moss starts the season as the RB1, I definitely could see Chase Brown taking that spot really quick. Jerome Ford is a bargain starter to begin your season. We already know Nick Chubb is going to start on the physically unable to perform list, which means first 4 weeks of the season, he's out. But even after that, at what point will he be 100%? And even when he is 100%, how often would Jerome Ford be used in the passing game? He's being drafted right now as the RB41. Stash him on your bench, use him the first 4 weeks of the season, maybe the first 6 weeks of the season, and then if he truly isn't getting any touches after Nick Chubb gets back, then you toss him to the waiver wire and you forget about him. But at least he helped you to begin the season. Now, there are some people out there that don't believe in Jameson Williams, and I'm not going to name any names, but if Taylor were to put his face on screen, I wouldn't argue against it. But Jameson Williams, for me this year, may not be one of the most consistent wide receivers that we would find, but he is an absolute big play threat with the Detroit Lions right now. He looks great in training camp. They are focusing on him right now to really utilize him more often in the game plan. Everybody in this offense is going to get fed. And I know I've tossed a lot of Lions on this list, but I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to miss out on getting your cut of the Lions offense this season. Jameson Williams may be a better best ball pick than redraft pick, but if you're dealing with injuries and the Lions have a really nice matchup, Jameson Williams could have a day. Now, I dive a little bit deeper into Tyrone Tracy Jr. in our draft guide, and I don't want to give all of that away right here, but just know I don't think Devin Singletary is the bona fide starter all season long. I think Tyrone Tracy Jr. is going to come for his job at some point. And maybe he doesn't take over this season, but I definitely could see him being a guy that's utilized quite a bit, not only on the ground, but in the passing game. You're looking for a super deep bargain at the tight end position, then I'm looking at Jonnu Smith from Miami. We know Tyreek Hill didn't miss any time last year, but he seemed to be beat up quite a bit. Jalen Waddle missed time again last season. They haven't really established a number 3 target yet. Odell Beckham Jr. isn't quite ready. They've got guys like Malik Washington and others that could end up stepping up into that spot. But for me personally, Jonnu Smith could be a guy to start the year, could have a very big impact on this Miami offense. And if he stays consistent, he could put together some big numbers this year. If Roman Wilson fills the Deontay Johnson role of this Steelers offense, then holy cow, ladies and gentlemen, there's no way that he doesn't outperform his current ADP of 209.2. Now, he is currently banged up and he's missing some time in training camp. He has every opportunity to be back by the start of the regular season. For as good as George Pickens could end up being this year, Roman Wilson could be a really savvy PPR pick. That's a guy that you end up flexing in really good matchups. The New York Jets really don't have a number 2 target behind Garrett Wilson right now. They have plenty of guys that could be, but will Malachi Corley end up being one of them? He definitely has some things that he has to work on. He's a little bit of a raw prospect, and the New York Jets are going to have to get him implemented into the game plan and growing through that offense as the season goes on. Maybe he's not a guy that makes an impact right away, but if Aaron Rodgers is struggling to find consistency with other receivers, the tight end position, or even Breece Hall is going to see some targets this year, but I don't know if he sees as much as last year, seeing as how his ground game could tick up a little bit. So because of that, Malachi Corley could end up finding himself as the number 2 target for the New York Jets by the end of the season. Headliner Nation, those are my top 20 players that I'm willing to overdraft because of how high I am on them. And listen up, make sure that you do not forget to leave me a comment down below with hashtag overdraft and give me an analysis of the player that you're willing to overdraft and why. I'll pin some of the best comments at the top of our comment section this week. And at the end of the week, I'm going to go ahead and pick the top commenter to get a draft guide for free. But for now, Headliner Nation, I'm going to get out of here. Peace out, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game.